Hi girls, today we're going to talk briefly about the joints within the musculoskeletal system. We're going to specifically look from the bone perspective. So to brief over them, the types of joints you need to know about are fibrous joints, which are held together only by ligament. So for example, teeth. There are a few others that we'll go through with pictures in a tick. Cartilaginous joints, they're connected between two bones by cartilage. So two bones are connected by cartilage only. For example, two vertebrae are connected by an intervertebral disc, which is made of cartilage, or for example, between the sternum, the breastbone, and the ribs. The other type of joint, is the synovial joint, which is the most common type of joint. It contains the synovial capsule and hyaline cartilage to lubricate and cushion the end of articulating bones. So if you think about when you eat a chicken drumstick, for example, you'll end up with a long bone, and on the end of that bone you've got cartilage, and that would usually fit into a synovial capsule. Okay, so it would be a part of a synovial joint, and there are 6 types of those, and I'll give you a handout for those in class. But when we look at specific examples, here for example we spoke about the fibrous joint first in the previous slide. So examples of the fibrous joints are the suture lines of the skull. So how the skull is separated into separate bones, they're joined by fibrous tissue only. In between the radius and the ulna, so when you hold your arm up, if I can get that in shot properly, you've got one bone on either side of the arm. They're held together in the middle there, right down the centre, by a fibrous joint. And your teeth. Your teeth are held into your gums by a fibrous joint. Then we've got cartilaginous joints, was the next one that we spoke about. So for example here, between the sternum and the ribs, they're held together by cartilage. Same with the vertebral column. You've got a vertebral body here, an intervertebral disc, and then another vertebral body. Okay, so the purpose of the cartilage in the intervertebral disc, for example, is to cushion impact. Okay, to lessen the impact on bone to bone. And then we've got synovial joints, so as we spoke about with synovial sockets and things like that. Here, for example, where the femur enters the hip joint, it's got a socket, it's got some lubrication, and it's covered with cartilage. Same here in the elbow joint. There's that little socket, and it's covered with cartilage, and it's lubricated. So they're the types of joints in a nutshell. Then if we look at synovial joints further, they're the most common joint in the body. So you've got pivot joints, and they pretty much do as they say. So a pivot joint allows for that type of movement with your head. Okay, hinge joint allows for movement in one direction only, and by one direction I really mean one plane, I should say, only. So like, for example, forwards and backwards, but not side to side. Saddle joint allows some sliding movement across 2 planes. Okay, a plane or a gliding joint does exactly that, allows gliding, but we're looking at, for example, just the horizontal plane. Condyloid joints, they're a bit funny. They look like the head of a, deodorant roll-on, and they stick together like that. So an example of that is between the radius and the carpal bones of the wrist. So that allows a fair bit of directional movement. And then you've got your simple ball and socket joint, just like the femur in the hip, okay, which allows plenty of movement, lots of range of movement in that type of joint. When we go a little bit further and we look at what joints allow us to do, they allow us to abduct. Remember, abduct, take away from the body. Adduct, add to the body. They allow us to flex, okay, and we'll talk about flexion further in class, but that decreases the angle of the joint. So if you're decreasing the angle of joint, making the angle of the joint smaller, you're flexing it. If you're making the angle of the joint larger, you're extending it. And then if you're able to perform circles with the joint, you're circumducting. Okay, so girls, that's joints in a nutshell. We'll chat a little further in class about it, but take notes, review your notes, and look further into it on the internet. Thanks, girls.